안녕하세요.
The city of Seoul gleamed with neon lights as luxury cars glided through the bustling streets. At the top of an imposing skyscraper, CEO Kang Ji-ho, one of the most powerful men in the country, gazed down at the city with a distant look. His life was ruled by spreadsheets, corporate mergers, and endless meetings. Love? A luxury for those who didn't have an empire to manage. His name graced the covers of business magazines, and his presence was feared and respected in equal measure. But despite all the power and wealth, a silent emptiness loomed over him. Every decision he made was calculated, every relationship a strategic alliance. Nothing ever happened beyond his control, until that night. On the other side of the social spectrum, Han Soo-jin rushed through the lobby of Kang Corporations, balancing a tray with hot coffees. As an employee of the company's catering service, she had only one goal: to do her job without drawing attention. Her mother was sick, the bills were piling up, and losing that job would mean financial collapse for her family. Soo-jin had faced hardships before and knew she couldn't afford to make mistakes. But fate, as capricious as ever, had other plans. In the main meeting room, where Kang Corporation's shareholders were gathered to discuss a new billion-dollar project, a small commotion began when Soo-jin tripped over a loose wire, and in the blink of an eye, the hot liquid spilled over Ji-ho's tailored suit. The silence in the room was sepulchral. It was as if time had stopped. I'm sorry," Soo-jin stammered, pale, leaning forward to clean the mess with a trembling napkin. Her heart pounded wildly. What had she done? Ruining the suit of a man like Kang Ji-ho was practically a professional death sentence. Ji-ho lifted his eyes from the stained fabric, and their gazes met. She expected anger, public humiliation, perhaps even immediate dismissal. The other executives were already murmuring among themselves, anticipating an outburst of fury. But to her surprise, he merely sighed and took the napkin from her hands, wiping himself off calmly. "It's fine," he murmured, his eyes analyzing her for a moment too long. "It happens." Soo-jin blinked, confused. The powerful Kang Ji-ho, known for his coldness and impatience, was being understanding? It made no sense. She swallowed hard, still gripping the tray with trembling hands. The whispers of the executives echoed through the room. Someone suggested that she be dismissed immediately, that this was an affront to the company's reputation. Before she could defend herself, Ji-ho raised a hand, cutting off the discussion. "That won't be necessary. Let's get back to the meeting." The tension in the room dissipated slightly, but Soo-jin knew the judging eyes were still on her. With one last glance at Ji-ho, she turned and left the room, feeling the weight of shame on her shoulders. She barely realized she had been holding her breath until she reached the hallway, where she finally let out a long sigh. Her heart was still hammering in her chest. That night seemed like a disaster, but something told her this wouldn't be the last time she encountered Kang Ji-ho. As he resumed the meeting, pretending to focus on the charts and projections, his mind kept drifting back to the young woman who had just left the room. Why had something so insignificant unsettled him? She was just an employee, someone he should never have noticed. But unwillingly, his thoughts returned to her. Ji-ho finds himself thinking about her all night, and the next day, their eyes meet again at the company, this time, intentionally. The dawn over Seoul brought another workday for Han Soo-jin. Still feeling the weight of last night's accident, she walked through the halls of Kang Corporations with her head down, hoping to go unnoticed. But the hope of anonymity didn't last long. As soon as she stepped into the employee cafeteria, whispers and curious glances surrounded her. "It's her, the girl who spilled coffee on the CEO." Soo-jin clenched her fists, taking a deep breath to ignore the stares. This was a nightmare. But worse than the whispers was the very real possibility of losing her job. She couldn't let that happen. As she tried to focus on her work, an unexpected message arrived on her phone. Her supervisor wanted to see her immediately. Soo-jin's heart pounded. Was this the end? She walked to the supervisor's office, where she was informed that Kang Ji-ho had requested her presence on the executive floor. Her heart hammered in her chest as she rode the mirrored elevator, each second stretching into eternity. When the doors opened, She was greeted by the CEO's secretary, who led her to the expansive, glass-walled office. Jiho was seated at his desk, reviewing some documents. Upon hearing the door close, he lifted his gaze and looked at her with the same unreadable expression from the night before. Han Sujin, isn't it? Yes, sir. She gave a quick bow, feeling her palms sweat. He stood up slowly, walking toward the window. You seem nervous. I thought I was here to be fired. The confession slipped out before she could stop herself. Jiho raised an eyebrow, surprised. Fired? Over a simple accident? Sujin nodded, hesitant. I really need this job, sir. My family depends on me. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, an emotion she couldn't quite decipher. What if I told you I want you working closer to me? Shock coursed through Sujin like lightning. The CEO offers Sujin a new position, but rumors within the company intensify, and the first conflicts begin to arise. Kang Ji-ho's proposal caught Han Sujin completely off guard. Working directly with the CEO, it felt like either a dream or a nightmare about to come true. But she had no time to hesitate. Within days, she was already settled into her new position as the magnate's personal assistant. The hallways of the executive floor were different from the rest of the company. Everything was pristine, gleaming, and the air was filled with the woody scent that Jiho always wore. However, there was something else, the presence of watchful eyes. Rumors about Jin's sudden promotion were already circulating, and not everyone was pleased with the CEO's decision. You're lucky, you know. Many would give anything to be in your place, remarked an HR employee, her smile failing to mask the venom in her words. Sujin returned a polite smile, but her heart felt heavy. It wasn't luck. It was hard work, or at least that's what she wanted to believe. Meanwhile, Jiho was beginning to realize that his decision would not be easily accepted. During a family dinner, his father, Kang Dae-hyun, an even more feared magnate than himself, did not hide his displeasure. A mere employee? This is unacceptable. Jiho, you know your marriage has already been arranged with Minister Park's daughter. Jiho tightened his grip on the crystal glass in his hands, trying to maintain his composure. I am not a piece on your chessboard, father. I decide who stands by my side. A sharp silence hung over the table. His mother averted her gaze, and his younger sister held her breath. No one challenged Kang Dae-hyun without consequences. Meanwhile, Sujin was beginning to realize that her life would never be the same, and in the midst of the brewing storm, she and Jiho would find themselves drawn closer and closer together. Feelings between Jiho and Sujin intensify, but threats begin to emerge. Someone within the company wants to destroy her, and the Kang family will do whatever it takes to keep them apart. The following days were a whirlwind. Kang Jiho and Han Sujin were growing closer, but so were the shadows surrounding them. The atmosphere at Kang Corporations was thick with judgmental stares and malicious whispers. Sujin couldn't ignore that some female employees now treated her with open hostility. That morning, as she was organizing documents in the CEO's office, an anonymous envelope slid under the door. With trembling hands, she picked it up and opened it, revealing a photograph of her and Jiho leaving the building together. The message on the back was short but menacing. Leave before it's too late. Jin's heart pounded. Someone wanted her gone. But who? Her mind raced through possibilities, and the tension became unbearable when Jiho entered the room and immediately noticed her distress. Sujin, what's wrong? She hesitated, but eventually showed him the photo. Jiho's expression darkened instantly. This is a warning. They're trying to scare you. But what if they succeed? Her voice came out weaker than she had hoped. I don't want to cause problems for you. Jiho gripped the photo tightly, his eyes burning with determination. No one is going to take you away from me. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, his family was already making moves. His father, Kang Dae-hyun, had taken measures to put an end to this inconvenient relationship, and a secret meeting was underway with one of the company's shareholders. The net was closing in. That same night, Sujin walked through the streets of Seoul, trying to clear her mind. Every shadow felt like a threat, every sound like a warning. Her heart was still pounding with fear. However, when her phone vibrated, she didn't expect the message she received. The truth about you will be revealed. Prepare to fall. She held her breath. What did that mean? What could they possibly have against her? She tried to call Jiho, but before she could dial, a black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down slowly, revealing a man in a dark suit who smiled at her. Miss Han Sujin, my boss would like to have a word with you. Before she could react, two firm hands grabbed her arms and pulled her into the vehicle. The door slammed shut with a sharp click, and the car sped off through the city streets. Jiho decides to investigate who is behind the threats, but Sujin becomes the target of an even crueler scheme. A scandal is about to be exposed, putting everything at risk. And now, she is in the hands of unknown enemies. The clock read 9 at night when Kang Ji-ho realized something was wrong. Sujin hadn't responded to his messages, and after the threats she had received, he knew he couldn't ignore even the smallest sign of danger. Grabbing his car keys, he left his office without telling anyone, his heart pounding. He called his best friend, Park Min-ho, asking him to track Soo Jin's phone location. Fear settled in him like a storm ready to break. Meanwhile, inside the luxury car taking her to an unknown destination, Soo Jin struggled to control her fear. The man who had taken her, dressed in a dark suit with a cold demeanor, glanced at her through the rearview mirror with a faint smirk. Miss Han, there's no need to worry. We just want to talk. Who are you? Where are you taking me? She asked, her voice wavering between defiance and terror. The man didn't answer. Instead, the car stopped in front of an imposing building in the heart of Seoul. The doors opened, and two guards escorted her inside. The scent of expensive leather and the gleam of the marble floor only confirmed what she already suspected. This was one of the Kang family's corporate offices. As soon as she entered, Sujin recognized the figure waiting for her. Kang Dae-hyun, the powerful patriarch of the Kang family, seated behind a massive desk, watching her with razor-sharp eyes. Did you really think you could get close to my son without consequences? Dae-hyun's voice was cutting, filled with contempt. Sujin took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Her entire body trembled, but she refused to let this man crush her. I have no intention of harming Ji-ho. I love him. Dae-hyun's dry laughter echoed through the room. Love? There is no place for love in the world of the Kangs. Do you think you can simply walk into our lives and change everything? I've looked into your life, Han Sujin. A woman with no fortune, no connections. A mere employee at my company. You are an inconvenience that can be easily removed. With every word, Soo Jin's chest tightened, but she lifted her chin, refusing to show weakness. Money and power can't decide everything, Mr. Kang. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I just want to be with Ji-ho. Dae-hyun's eyes glinted with impatience. He stood up slowly and walked toward her, stopping just inches away. Then let's see how strong your resolve really is. His voice dropped to a dangerously low tone. If you truly love him, you will leave him. Sujin felt her heart sink. He was trying to force her to give up. Meanwhile, Ji-ho was driving through the streets of Seoul like a storm. Min-ho had managed to track Sujin to his father's office. Without hesitation, Ji-ho slammed the brakes in front of the building and stepped out, his strides firm and filled with fury. He stormed through the hallways like a whirlwind and pushed open his father's office doors with force. Dad! His voice echoed through the room. What the hell do you think you're doing? Dae-hyun slowly turned to face his son. I am protecting you, Ji-ho, from a woman who doesn't belong in our world. Ji-ho's gaze was filled with pure defiance. Sujin doesn't need to belong to your world. She belongs to mine. The tension in the air was suffocating. Sujin looked at Ji-ho, fear and love battling inside her. But now, more than ever, she knew she couldn't back down. Ji-ho confronts his father in a battle of words and power, but Dae-hyun has a trump card that could destroy everything. Will Sujin be willing to pay the price to stay by his side? The silence that followed Ji-ho's declaration was like the eye of a storm. Sujin felt her heart pounding as Kang Dae-hyun kept his cold gaze fixed on his son. He was not used to being challenged, least of all by his own heir. Are you really willing to throw away everything I built just to be with this woman? Dae-hyun's voice was low, dangerous. Ji-ho lifted his chin, his eyes shining with unwavering determination. If everything you built means a life without freedom, without love, then yes, I would rather lose it all than lose Sujin. Dae, Hyun's face darkened. He had not expected Jiho to go this far. For a brief moment, something close to respect flickered in his eyes, but he quickly returned to his impenetrable demeanor. Then leave my company. Leave my family. You are no longer a Kang. Sujin felt the weight of those words like a sharp blade. Jiho stood silent for a moment, absorbing the blow, but then he smiled. A calm, resolute smile. If it means I can be happy by her side, then I accept. The room seemed to tremble with the finality of his decision. Dae-hyun turned his back to them, dismissing them with a gesture of disdain. Jiho took Soo-jin's hand and pulled her away. Away from all of it. The following months were difficult. Jiho lost his position in the company, was discredited in business circles, and had to rebuild his life from scratch. But he was never alone. Sujin was by his side every step of the way. With time, Jiho founded his own company, proving that his talent did not depend on his family name. And when his success became undeniable, his father began to realize he had underestimated his own son. There were no apologies, but there was recognition even, if unspoken. By the end of that year, Jiho and Sujin were married in a simple ceremony, surrounded by friends and the people who truly mattered. And when years later, they held their first child in their arms, Jiho knew he had made the right choice.